Schönen guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Willkommen beim taztalk. Taztalk meets Buchmesse. Heute haben wir hier den 199. Taztalk und noch heute wird es auch den 200. geben. Mein Name ist Klaus Hillenbrand. Ich bin Redakteur bei Taz 1. Das ist das Ressort, das die ersten 5 Seiten in der Taz zusammenstellt, einschließlich dieser nicht ganz unbekannten Titelseite. Und unser Gast heute, den begrüße ich sehr, sehr herzlich, das ist Lizzie Doron. Lizzie Doron, Schriftstellerin aus Israel, geboren 1953 in Tel Aviv. Sie lebt heute in Tel Aviv und auch in Berlin. Und wir haben gerade festgestellt, während wir hier zusammen zoomen und uns vorbereitet haben, dass wir nur ungefähr 10 Minuten voneinander wegsitzen, wenn wir zu Fuß gehen würden. Aber jetzt machen wir es halt trotzdem über Zoom. Lizzie Doron ist eine sehr bekannte Schriftstellerin in Israel, aber auch weit darüber hinaus, auch in Deutschland, und hat eine ganze Reihe sehr, sehr bekannter Romane geschrieben, ist sehr ausgezeichnet worden auch dafür. Ich nenne ein paar Titel. Warum bist du nicht vor dem Krieg gekommen? Erschienen 1998. Der Anfang von etwas Schönem erschien im Jahr 2007. Das Schweigen meiner Mutter, ein wirklich berühmter Roman, erschien 2011 in München. Und das neueste Buch heißt Was wäre, wenn? Übersetzt aus dem Hebräischen von Markus Lemke, erschienen bei DTV. Darüber möchten wir heute mit Lizzie Doron sprechen. Wir werden die Unterhaltung auf Englisch führen. Ich werde versuchen, Ihre Fragen und wichtige Teile der Antworten kurz zusammenzufassen, aber erwarten Sie nicht eine komplette Übersetzung. Aber Sie sind selbstverständlich gerne eingeladen, Fragen zu stellen. Das können Sie tun über taztalk in einem Wort, @taz.de. Sie können es auch über die Chatbereiche von YouTube und Facebook machen. Und dann ist auch ganz wichtig zu sagen, dass dieser 199. Taztalk zur Buchmesse auch möglich gemacht worden ist durch unser System taztalk, wo Leserinnen und Leser und Zuhörerinnen und Zuhörer freiwillig einen Beitrag dazu geben, dass es die Taz gibt, dass es den Taztalk gibt, dass es taz.de, also die Internetausgabe gibt und dass wir uns zum Beispiel hier heute unterhalten können. Dankeschön. Lizzie Doron, welcome to taztalk. You grew up with your mother, but without your father in the southern part of Israel, of Tel Aviv. It was a neighborhood at that time with many, many Holocaust survivors, including your mother. How was your childhood influenced by this? Your mother could not let you alone and was always in fear, I understand.
Well, first of all, shalom. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. And yes, this was the beginning of my life. I grew up just with my mom in a very, very small and closed neighborhood. I must say that the language was not Hebrew. It was the language of East European countries. So I just learned to know that I live in a kind of special place, no option to go outside. I knew nothing about the past of my mother. I knew nothing about the strange people that had numbers tattooed on their hands. They were shouting, they were crying, they were talking among themselves in so many languages, Hungarian, Russian, Romanian, Polish, Yiddish. And we, the children, had to find our world. And I think that the need to understand what's going on was the most important issue from scratch. From childhood, I wanted to know more and to understand. And because no one really gave me the answers, I'm not sure I knew to ask the questions, but basically I built up a world which was a combination of my imagination, wishful thinking, thought, fears, and pieces of the real life, which I saw around me. And these are the tools and the material that goes with me all my life. And those are the materials that I write, tell, and share in my books.
Was it a world in this neighborhood which was moving to the past, or were there really Israelis staying there, or these Holocaust survivors, did they arrive in the new country, or did they still live with their memories, with the killing fields, with all the past, with their killing friends and all the other people they had knew?
That's one of the most problematic issue that I experienced, because I grew up with a silence attitude towards whatever happened in the past was unknown, unspeakable. But children has a kind of a feeling, or we understood from really early age that the parents are different. They are not sharing with us anything. So we, the children, created an alternative world. And from the moment we went to a kindergarten or to school, I think it was a kind of opening our mind and knowledge and understanding, because we got the mythological story of the dream of being Israeli, being strong, being hero, defending the country. We were the generation that built something new, the land for the Jewish people. But all this story about the present and the future was based on a kind of emptiness, because we couldn't get the full story. I think that first time that I could understand that Shoah happened to my parents, I was 12 or even older. The first opening of the Pandora box of the Shoah was during the Eichmann trial, which means 1961, but it was still a secret. The parents didn't want us to be involved. So they sent us to play in the streets, and they were listening to the radio to the trial. So it was always a kind of an unclear world, because we had all the time to dig and discover some secrets. But the shadow of the secrets were with us the whole way. And I think the dream of having an alternative life in Israel was at that time very important, because we could hold something that we wanted to live like or to follow. So the Israeli dream was for us a kind of a rehabilitation option without knowing what is our disease.
Ich unterhalte mich mit Lizzie Doron jetzt gerade über ihre Kindheit in Tel Aviv. Sie ist im Süden von Tel Aviv aufgewachsen. Ihre Mutter ist Holocaust-Überlebende. Ihren Vater hat sie nicht mehr kennenlernen können, weil er verstorben ist sehr frühzeitig. Und das war eine Welt der Überlebenden in dieser Nachbarschaft, in der sie aufgewachsen ist, die relativ wenig mit der Vorstellung der Israelis zu tun hatte, der israelischen Gesellschaft, den großen Aufbruch zu wagen, den neuen jüdischen Menschen zu erschaffen und einen starken jüdischen Staat zu begründen. Dinge, mit denen die Kinder konfrontiert waren, die natürlich dann auch die Vorstellung adaptierten, ja, ich möchte dazugehören, ich möchte auch ein Held werden, ich möchte auch Soldat oder Soldatin werden in der israelischen Armee und ich möchte dabei sein, wie diese neue Gesellschaft entsteht, während diejenigen, die die furchtbare Zeit der Shoah überlebt haben, doch sehr in ihrer Vergangenheit gefangen waren, ohne über diese Vergangenheit wirklich sprechen zu können. Lizzie Doron hat gerade gesagt, zum ersten Mal wirklich konfrontiert worden sei sie damals im Alter von 8 Jahren, 1961, während des Eichmann-Prozesses in Jerusalem. Aber selbst damals wurden die Kinder aus den Häusern geschickt, aus dem Heim, und sollten draußen auf der Straße spielen, während die Erwachsenen diesen Prozess in der Radioübertragung verfolgt haben. I'm asking all these questions, Lizzie, also because they are part of your new book, Was wäre, wenn? And you're also talking about your mother in this book. You'd even written a whole book about your mother, but what comes out in the new book also is that your mother behaved something like a helicopter mom, how we call it here in Germany, always being very much in fear of you and your life, which is also, of course, a result of her own life, that she was always in fear of the family because it happened to her so many horrible things when she had lived in Europe. Were you ashamed that time of your mother, or how did you react? Did you understand why she behaved as she did that time? Could a child understand that, or was it just a feeling, she's a little bit strange, I don't understand what she's doing here?
You were very polite in your questions. I don't know what other child could feel or say or react to a crazy, verrückt mother. I had dreams that God will take her away and the country will send me to kibbutz and then I will be safe. So shame, my feeling of shame were huge. I really wanted to choose an alternative mom and also an alternative father. And I wanted to escape from my life, and I was busy with all those options in order to find the kind of ruhic feelings inside me, because I felt that I cannot be a good Israeli with the baggage of my mom. And I just wanted to get rid of her and to create an alternative biography.
That's why you left for kibbutz as a youngster in the Golan area. But it seemed that your life there also not the thing you really wanted to have, or?
You have to do a circle in your life to find that you belong to your parents and you belong to your personal biography. You cannot escape. It's something in your inner world. It's not outside. Anyway, when I think about me with a gun and a shepherdess that run every morning with sheep in the fields, or walking with cows, I don't see how can I do it today. Thinking about being a kibbutz was a kind of an option, but my fears, my character, I think the seeds of my, maybe it's even in the gene that I found later in my life that I belong to Europe much more than to Israel, that even the language, I'm not speaking perfect Hebrewish, I must say. I have a lot of mistakes because my mother tongue was German. She talked to herself German language because it was forbidden in the streets. So I have a fixed idea about the German language. I can understand, but I cannot speak because it was forbidden. So I have still the barriers. So I think that I built up a life that were under the influence of Israel, of course, and under the influence of my mom. But at the end, I prefer to eat Wiener Schnitzel and Kartoffel mit cream or sahne than to eat falafel. And that's very interesting because I'm talking about basics, habits in life. And I was ashamed when my mom cooked the kraut or the schnitzel or the kartoffel because I wanted falafel and hummus. And she said, it's not your food. you one day will discover what you really like to eat. And it happened. And it's not falafel. It's very interesting. It's a process that I'm still on a process, because it's always a fight between two words. And I think that even my life, sharing my life in Tel Aviv and Berlin, it's also a deeper attitude about the difficult to build up one and perfect and full identity.
Wir sprechen so intensiv über Lizzie Dorons Kindheit und Jugend, weil das sehr viel mit dem Buch zu tun hat. Wir kommen jetzt aber schon auf das Buch zurück, keine Sorge. Was wäre, wenn? Hier ist es, erschienen bei DTV jüngst. Die Geschichte beginnt mit einem Telefonanruf, den eine Frau mit dem Namen Lizzie von einem Hospital, also einem Krankenhaus erhält. Und am Telefon ist ein Mann, den Lizzie im Buch in den letzten 40 Jahren nicht mehr selbst gesehen hat. Und er erzählt am Telefon, dass er schon sehr bald sterben werden müssen und dass er sehr, sehr gerne zum Lebensende mit ihr noch einmal sprechen würde. Und diese Lizzie fährt ins Krankenhaus, spricht mit Igal, das ist der Name dieses Mannes. Es ist aber jetzt kein sehr, sehr langes Gespräch, aber es ist der Beginn der Konfrontation mit der eigenen Vergangenheit für sie. Und Lizzie wird in dieser Nacht nicht mehr schlafen gehen, sondern über die unterschiedlichen Aspekte und Menschen in ihrem Leben in einer ganzen Serie von Flashbacks reflektieren. Das ist jetzt ganz, ganz grob umrissen, der Inhalt des Buchs. Alles werden wir nicht verraten, die sollen es ja schließlich lesen und auch kaufen. Aber I suppose Lizzie understood my German. And
I think so. I need a translation to be sure, but I understand. You're summarizing the opening scene of the book.
Yeah, I gave a shortcut of your new book, Was wäre, wenn?
Yeah.
And my question, first of all, is the book is called a novel. Well, I'm not quite sure if this is correct. Isn't it in reality a memoir? What is fiction in that book and what is reality, Lizzie?
Listen, I'm not sure. For me, reality and imagination are a mixture. But I can tell you what happened that brought me to write this book. It was an evening in a restaurant that a friend of us told me, he said, "You're a writer. I want to tell you something very strange. 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from a friend. He told me that he's in hospice and he has 24 hours to live. And he wanted me to be the last person he would see before leaving our world. And he's a very tough lawyer. And he looked at me and he said, it was so strange. Now I'm 60. I saw him last time when we were 14 years old. I know nothing about his life. I don't know why he chose me. But I felt I had to go. He went to the hospital, but he came late. This guy passed away. And then we continue eating the second dish and we stopped talking about this really strange story. I came home. I couldn't sleep the whole night. And I felt that there is a man in the world that I owe him and I have to tell his story. And I think that I was under the influence of a guilt feeling that I was sorry that I was not the one who my hero in the book was the one to call me to the last farewell. I had no clue what happened to him, but he was a friend from childhood. He was a very, very special and different guy. And what was interesting, we had a kind of a bonding, but it was a story of an unfinished business. I think that on that night, I felt that for all his life, I think that last time I saw him, we were around 50 years. He tried to tell me his personal story, his experience as a soldier in the Israeli army, as the child that found himself following the Israeli dreams and the payment, and what that means being a hero, being a soldier. And he wanted me to follow him, to be a political activist, to fight against the people that believe that we can gain wars. But he did it in a very crazy way. He sent me hundreds of fax on those days, hundreds of emails. He stood in front of my house shouting, Lizzie, we should go. We should stand in front of the Israeli Knesset. We have to do this and this. We have to stop the next war. We have to change the Israeli mentality. And I think that he was a kind of a borderline. And what is said in this story is that in a retrospective, he was very clever. He was a kind of a prophet who could see the future. But first of all, most of my life, I wanted to be in the center of the consensus. It's easier and it's better, believe me. I have an experience living the consensual values and way of thinking. It's not easy. And I think that I was the one that he asked me to give him a helping hand, and I left him by himself. And the story of the friend was just a trigger to make a kind of a personal soul searching. And I wrote this book in 7 days. I couldn't stop writing. All what I remembered about Eagle came out easily, fluently, and behind the echo and the voices of my mom, which in a way was the spiritual mom of Eagle. And I found out that they had really a very special, conflictual, but very special relationship. My mother, in her way, adored him because she understood that he understood something like her about the payment of war. And I think that this journey took me to a very good place, because when I finished the book, I felt first time that it's a closure. Mainly I write about the past, but even though the story belonged to the past, the closure or the conclusion belonged to the future. And that is what's very important for me in this book.
It is a book about family life. It's a book about friendship. It's a book about loyalty, let me say so. And in a way, it's also a book about the history of the state of Israel, as it becomes very important for all those persons who are shown in this book. And
if I can interrupt, a small aspect of human sensitivity and behavior, and relation between people, those small things that build up the bigger issues. Because at the basic, we're supposed to be lovers, and it didn't work, but there was the basics of being a kind of a couple. And that's what I realized when I end the book, that the emotional aspect should be there in every step in the story.
And in a way, it's also a book about heroism, isn't it? Because you're telling the story of the young Israelis in the 60s who were very, very proud of the state of Israel, and who also wanted to become heroes in the IDF, in the Israeli army, and who thought of becoming officers in that proud army. But in a way, in 1967, with the so-called 6 Days War, also for younger listeners, that was a war when many different Arab armies tried to conquer Israel, but Israel started that war just days before the Arabs wanted to do so. And at that time, they occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which had become a problem now for so many years. And that was a time of being proud of the country and of the state and of the army. And later on, after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, that changed, not for the majority of the Israelis, but maybe for a small minority who started asking questions like, is the occupation of the Arab land, especially in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, is it a correct way the state and the country should behave or not? Is it really a good thing to become a hero? And that's a question also those people like Yigal and Lizzie and all the others in your book are discussing, or Lizzie is discussing in her memories, it's better to say. So, but on the other hand, I think was very understandable after the horror of the Second World War that the survivors who left for Israel never wanted to get in a situation where they are vulnerable and where they are, but in the contrary, where they should be strong to behave on their own and not to be dependent to others. So also this feeling, I want to become a member of these proud societies, quite natural. That was a time also where the protagonists in your book think in the 60s in that way. Is it a wrong feeling or is it just an understandable feeling?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't think I know the answer. I just can share with you my feeling. I think that we needed for the beginning to overcome the feeling of a victims and to feel that we have another option and we can be not just victims, but only heroes. But maybe this was not the right solution. This was not the right way to overcome the feelings that we were the victim, because you never know when to stop being a victim and you never know when to stop being a hero. And between those two options, you are lost, because either you have to be afraid all the time and to fight for your life, and you cannot see the other. And the other thing, which is really, I found out that this is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a victim, that he became the perpetrator because he wanted to change or to switch his psychological status, if I may say, or personalities, and then he became the cruel person. So dealing with solution like holding these two options lead us to an unsolvable situation. And for the moment, we see in Israel the result. We hold the occupied territories. We became, in a way, an apartheid country. We have also in our inner country relationship a lot of doubts and questions in different ways. And, you know, when people are in danger or in fear and they don't find a common ground or common values, we became divided. There are groups that believe that God will save us, and many people became more religious. There are groups that believe that it was right to sing like we thought at the establishing days of the country. And there are people that say, enough. We have to be a normal state. We cannot hold the trauma forever. We should be liberal, open, enough with, you know, racism and inequality and excluded the other, and building a mythological point of view that we will, as Jewish nation, we will be always attacked by the others. So we have to get rid of a lot of stereotypes or past belief of behavior. And it's very difficult right now to make the change. And that's the reason that for the moment, Israel is a state, if I may say, it's the first time that it came to my mind, under the attack of their own people, because their own people want to find a solution, and we don't know what is the solution to become a normal place.
But on the other hand, as you just told us, to be an opponent against the society is a very difficult way to live, and to be loyal to the society is an easy way to live. So it's reflected in your book. We'll get to the content for a short time. Sorry. Ich muss noch ein bisschen erzählen über den Inhalt des Buches. Es geht um das Leben im jungen Israel in den 60er, 70er Jahren vor allen Dingen, um die Identifikation mit dem Staat und der Armee und ihren Soldaten. Und Igal, derjenige, der auf dem Totenbett liegt, ist zu diesem Zeitpunkt davon überzeugt, dass er gerne ein Held werden möchte. Ein Held für Israel in der Armee. Und das kann sich im 67er-Krieg, im sogenannten Sechstagekrieg noch manifestieren, aber im Jom-Kippur-Krieg von 1973 wird Igal von der syrischen Armee gefangen genommen und später ausgetauscht und damit befreit. Und er verändert seine eigene Auffassung und Meinung dramatisch und wird zum Gegner der Armee und zum Gegner von Besatzung und zum Gegner von all diesen Kriegen, die Israel führt hat oder führen musste. Und er wird zum großen Außenseiter. Igal becomes an outsider of the society. But only very few soldiers joined him that time, and also Lizzie in the book kept distance to Igal's actions. I think it's very, very hard not to identify with the state in Israel. It's very, very hard to become an opponent, as you are in that situation only a member of a very, very small minority. And this is reflected in the book as well. So Igal, let's say so, becomes a little bit strange in his actions as well. He's really an outsider. Is that the way many people behave in the Israeli society? I mean, those who are opponent of the politics of the state. Is it a typical way, or why do you characterize Igal in that way?
I think that Igal is an exception, but you always get reflection, or even I can say he was a kind of a mirroring to the Israelis, his age, to the Israeli who wanted to build their free own life. I don't think that we have a lot of Igals, but the debris of the wishes of Igal influence a lot of groups in Israel. And for the moment, I think that you can see that young people are ready to leave Israel. Once it was really something that no one could think about, leaving the state of the Jewish people and live in other countries. But I think that in the last 20 years, or even I mentioned another political central issue in our life after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, people felt that Israel hasn't found yet the right way to solve the Jewish problem and to find a weak place for them. So it's a shaky place in a way. And you can find people that are very patriotic and believe that this is the place and they would never ever leave this place. But you can find also people that doubt and ask questions about if it's right to have a country, a land, a place for a certain religion or for the Jewish people. Are not we, the Jewish people, can live everywhere as it was in the history before the Second World War? Should we have just one solution? Can we have other options? I think that for the moment, I think that the voice of Yigal is very important because he asked the questions. And in a way, he had his own answers, but we are still dealing with them. And for me, meeting again with Yigal, which I try to reject and ignore, it's again opening all those questions, dealing with my relation with my country, with my place, and with my life and choices.
But in a way, Lizzie, Yigal fails in his life. First, he does not become a hero, and later on, no one hears his protest. While Lizzie, in the book, the Lizzie, of course, seems to be well integrated and successful. But also she is hunted by her past, the mother, the kibbutz. So in a way, both lives fail. Lizzie is alive, has a husband, children, and a good life. Is there anyone to blame for that? Or is there no one to blame? Or is it just a reflection of the difficulties in the society like Israel?
You know, I want to put a comment on what you say because I was in the consensus. I think I was lucky. I succeed surviving, I may say, in a good way in Israel. But the moment I came closer to Yigal, which means when I stopped writing books about telling the story of the Holocaust or second generation, and I was curious to know better and know closer the stories of my Palestinian neighbors. And I went to a Palestinian family in Silwan. I lived with them for 3 years on a weekly basis. I was there 2 days every week, and I wrote the book with the Fakis Kafka. And from that moment, I was ambition Yigal because they saw me as a collaborator. They saw me as a traitor. They stopped publishing my books in Israel. And in a way, I'm today, as a writer, not as a person or a citizen, I'm persona non grata because my books are just published in German English and not in Hebrew anymore. And even this book, by the way, wäre, wenn, which deal with us, with the Jewish story, with the Jewish dream and the payment, I got from publisher, again, this open question, why are not you back in the Holocaust stuff? Holocaust is selling well. You did so well. You were so popular. You were so famous. You won prizes. So what happened to you? So I can answer you that I became a bit Yigal. And being Yigal means to be, in a way, thrown out of the consensus circle. And it's not easy because I think that I want to deliver the story and the conclusion and the feeling and the doubts and the question to my people. And you can guess how it feels that I found that my best friend to share those questions about humanity, about understanding the enemy, about giving helping hand to someone in need, I do it mostly in Germany. So this is a kind of a seesaw, I think, in life when you are going out of the consensual way. And I experienced a bit what that means being Yigal. It's not easy.
Yeah, what does it mean for the Israel society when you tell me that you have huge problems publishing your books which don't deal with the Holocaust, but with the Israeli society and with the question how to deal with the Palestinians? Ich frage Lizzie gerade, sie hatte große Schwierigkeiten in den letzten Jahren, ihre Bücher in Hebräisch in Israel selbst zu veröffentlichen. Es fanden sich keine Verlage mehr. Ihre ersten Bücher waren in Israel ein sehr großer Erfolg, als es dort auch um die Auseinandersetzung und die Aufarbeitung der Shoah ging. Sobald sie sich immer stärker mit der israelischen Gesellschaft befasste in ihren Romanen und diese israelische Gesellschaft auch sehr deutlich kritisiert hat, insbesondere die Besatzungspolitik in der Westbank und im Gazastreifen, umso mehr ist Lizzie in der israelischen Gesellschaft zum Outsider geworden. Does it mean that the Israeli society is less liberal than we think in Europe? That they have no corner for you to be published?
I want more than a corner. I want the room. I don't know to answer about the whole or complete Israeli society, because I think that people want to be normal everywhere. They want to go to work, they want family, all those simple dreams, which are the most important dreams, by the way.
I agree.
But I think that the people don't want to fight for others. They want to go on their track from the beginning till the end. But I think what is different in Israel, that the extreme groups became stronger, and the extreme right groups. And that's the problem, because they have the voice for the moment, not because they are the majority, because they are much more aggressive, they feel much more brave, and they break the rules and they break the law. It's very difficult on a personal basis. When I get phone call at 12 o'clock at night that I am a traitor and a few settlers who try to threaten me and my family, and I don't know how to react, what to do. So it's not the whole Israeli society, but there are few strong right groups which they made for the moment the change in Israel, because in the days of Netanyahu, they were supported silently by the authorities. I can tell you something that in the last years, all my books, even those who were dealing with second generation and the Holocaust, they are not anymore in schools, or it's very hard to find them even in bookstores. Mm-hmm. So they try to erase all my story because I went far. But I don't have any supporters, even publishers in Israel. At the end, it's a business that they want to sell more books. They don't want to deal with aggressive or extremists and to stand and to fight. They want to sell books. I can tell you it's an interesting short event that gave me a deep understanding about what's going on in Israel when a society is under stress or fear. When my book, Sweet Occupation, telling the story of combatants for peace, it's Israeli and Palestinian groups that fight together for peace, was published. Of course, it was published in Germany, and I got donation from Goethe Institute. They translated the book, which was written in Hebrew, into Hebrew based on my German version. So this is another complication. And we tried to sell it to Israeli publishing house. One of the publishing house agreed. I went to a small bookstore near my house. I live in an area that most of the people, I think, vote for the left parties. And the owner of the bookstore came out of the book and said, Lizzie, I must tell you something. I put your book in the window, you see. And I said, oh, thank you. And he said, but 2 days ago came two people from the right, and they told me that if I put your book in the window. They will throw stones to the window because you are a collaborator and you love the Arabs. And I said, listen, this is a free country. We are democracy. And Lizzie is a good writer. I will fight for her. And I thank him. And I think he's an old guy with a beautiful small bookstore. But after 3 days, I went again for shopping and I saw that he took out the book out of the window. So this is the story that people are afraid to deal with people. So it's not a matter of ideology. I know that he has the same opinion, the same attitudes, and we probably vote for the same party. But he has to earn his money and he has to run the shop. So
that means it's a question of fear.
Yeah. Stress, fear, the need for normal life. And not all the people has this triggering energy that bring them to be fighters or to be opponents, to sing. You need energy. I know how much energy I put on struggling to stop the occupation, to keep democracy, to fight for equality and human rights. So I know that it takes a lot of my time. Maybe I'm a privileged person to fight for that. Maybe it's a present that I can make it. Hopefully not like Yigal, that he did it and became totally crazy. I still have one foot, hopefully, in the consensual life, and the second one in this Yigal words life. And I'm happy with that because this gave me a feeling that I'm honest with my belief.
So typically for Israel, we discuss about the book, and where we end in politics. So
politics is everywhere. Otherwise, you ignore an important part in the life.
What about
Think about Corona, how we needed a country to organize our life,
But Lizzie, what about optimism? Bibi Netanyahu is no longer the prime minister of Israel. I know that you have protested many, many times against his government, together with with thousands of Israelis. Are you more optimistic now with the new government in Israel for the future and the collaboration between Israelis and Palestinians and of a peaceful settlement in the country, or what do you think?
Don't break my agenda. I have to be pessimistic in order to have this energy to fight and to write. I cannot live in a wonderful, perfect world. What should I do? Writers need to be in places like Israel. Israel is a paradise for writers. We have so many materials.
Lizzie, I'm really optimistic that you can stay pessimistic.
Thank you for that. I take it with me. Wonderful future we have together.
Well, thank you very much. Vielen Dank, Lizzie Doron.
Thank you, and see you for coffee in Tel Aviv.
Yes, and meine Damen und Herren, ich kann Ihnen Was wäre, wenn, das neue Buch von Lizzie Doron, nur wärmstens empfehlen. Ein berührendes Buch, das die richtigen Fragen an das Leben stellt, ein Buch über die israelische Gesellschaft, aber auch über uns alle, unsere Vergangenheit, unsere Fehler und unsere Zukunft. Leider haben diese Live-Talks wie heute, der 199. taztalk, den kleinen Nachteil, dass Lizzie Doron jetzt kein Autogramm auf die erste Seite schreiben kann. Aber damit müssen Sie leben. Was wäre, wenn, bei DTV erschienen und kostet 18 €. Und bevor ich mich hier von diesem taztalk verabschiede, noch ein Hinweis auf die nächste Gesprächsrunde. Die ist schon heute Abend um 19 Uhr, der 200. taztalk-Jubiläum. Dort stellt Katrin Gottschalk, die stellvertretende Chefredakteurin der Taz, hier im Stream und parallel in der Berliner Taz-Kantine das neue Buch von Anne-Christine Klusti vor. Es trägt den einprägsamen Namen Süß. Sie sind wie immer herzlich eingeladen. Once again, Danke Ihnen allen. Danke ganz besonders. Thanks a lot to Lizzie Doron.
Danke und auf Wiedersehen. Bis dann.
Und auf Wiedersehen und machen Sie es gut und noch einen schönen Tag. Ihr Klaus Hillenbrand von der Taz, die Tageszeitung. Einen schönen Tag noch.
Same to you. Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye, bye.
Bye, bye.